63rd birthday fell on a Sunday that year, and my son had promised to make it special. He'd been saying that for 2 weeks. "We're planning something, Dad. Don't make other arrangements." So I didn't. I turned down Vic Marchetti's invitation to watch the game at his place, told my neighbor June I'd take a rain check on her offer to cook, and I sat in the guest bedroom of my own house, waiting to be called down for dinner. At 6:15, I heard the front door. Not my son's voice. Several voices. Unfamiliar laughter. A woman's high pitch. The clatter of something being said on my kitchen counter. I opened my bedroom door and stood at the top of the stairs listening. The smell of roasted garlic drifted up, something I hadn't cooked myself, because I'd been told not to bother. I descended the stairs, the way you do when you're not sure what you're walking into. The dining room table was set for 8. My good china, the set my wife Lorraine bought at an estate sale in 1991, laid out for people I didn't recognize. Candles lit. A centerpiece my daughter-in-law had brought from somewhere. Fresh eucalyptus and white flowers. Very tasteful. Very much not mine. My son stood at the head of the table laughing at something one of his work friends had said. He was wearing the blue linen shirt I'd given him for Christmas. He looked up and answered. Not surprise exactly. More like mild inconvenience. "Oh, hey, Dad." He said it the way you'd say it to a neighbor who showed up while you were in the middle of something. "We're just getting started." I looked at the table. 8 settings. All occupied or about to be. "Is there a place for me?" I asked. "My daughter-in-law. I'll call her what she's always wanted me to call her." Nothing, because she never asked me to call her anything at all. She looked up from arranging a salad bowl. She had the particular expression of someone who'd planned for this moment and was pleased with how it was landing. "We thought you might be tired," she said. "There's a plate in the kitchen." She said it pleasantly. That's what I want you to understand. The words were pleasant. The smile was pleasant. 8 people sat at my dining room table on my birthday, eating off my wife's china, and my daughter-in-law had left me a plate in the kitchen with the same tone she might use to tell someone the bathroom was down the hall. I walked into the kitchen. The plate was on the counter next to the coffee maker. A paper plate. Not one of the good ones. A thin, flimsy thing, the kind you use at a child's picnic, already bowing slightly from the weight of the food. Chicken thighs, slightly overdone. A spoonful of rice. A few green beans pushed to one side. It looked like the plate you'd prepare for someone's dog if the dog had a sensitive stomach. Through the archway, I could see my dining room, hear the conversation, the clink of glasses, someone complimenting my daughter-in-law on the eucalyptus centerpiece. I stood there for a moment with that paper plate in my hands. Then I set it back on the counter, walked to the garage, got in my truck, and drove. I want to tell you I had a plan. I didn't. I drove 30 minutes north on Route 9 with the windows down in the September dark, and somewhere around the county line, I pulled into a Denny's parking lot, ordered a Grand Slam from a teenager who called me sir, and sat in a booth under fluorescent lights eating eggs and thinking, not about what they'd done, about what I was going to do. I had lived in that house for 31 years. My name was on the deed, the utilities, the property tax bills that came every fall like a polite reminder that I owned something worth taking care of. My son had moved back in 2 years ago when his apartment lease ended, and the job in Portland didn't materialize, and there were very good reasons, temporarily, for him to have a room. That temporary arrangement had quietly become permanent, the way these things do. 1 month becomes 6, 6 becomes a year. The guest room fills up with his things. His wife starts rearranging the kitchen cabinets, and somewhere in there you stop being the homeowner and start being a tenant in your own life. I'd kept track, the way I always keep track of things. 29 years in logistics management will do that to you. You develop a particular relationship with numbers, with documentation, with the understanding that feelings fade but spreadsheets don't lie. The monthly cost of running my house, $3,200, mortgage paid off but taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance. My son's contribution, 0. My daughter-in-law's contribution, 0. Their stated reason for not paying rent, "We're saving up, Dad. Just give us a little more time." The number of months I'd heard that, 22. I ordered a second coffee. The Denny's was nearly empty. An older couple in a corner booth, a trucker at the counter, the kind of place where nobody asks you what you're doing there alone on a Sunday night. I appreciated that. I drove home around 10. Their friends' cars were gone. The lights were on in the master bedroom. Their bedroom, the one that used to be mine and Lorraine's, the one I'd quietly moved out of 14 months ago when my daughter-in-law mentioned she'd always wanted to be on the south side of the house, and I'd gone along with it the way I'd been going along with things. I went to the guest room, sat at the small desk I'd moved in when I moved out, and opened my laptop. I wasn't angry. I want to be clear about that. I was done. Those are different states. Anger is hot and loud and wants an audience. Done is quiet. Done makes a list. I started with a spreadsheet I'd been building for 8 months without fully admitting to myself why. 2 years of bank statements, utility bills, grocery receipts, credit card statements going back to when I'd added my son as an authorized user for emergencies. A phrase that had apparently come to include a new sectional sofa. 4 weekends in Asheville. A sous vide machine still in its box in the basement. And 11 months of a streaming service I don't watch. By 2 in the morning, the number on my screen was $54,800. Not a rough estimate. An itemized figure, broken down by category, cross-referenced, double-checked, $54,823 over 24 months. Not $1 of it voluntary on their end. Not $1 of acknowledgement that they were living inside something I had built and was still maintaining while they saved up for a life that apparently didn't include me at the table. I saved the file. Closed the laptop. Turned off the desk lamp. The house was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, my son was asleep in my bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. I called my bank at 7 the next morning. Customer service, patient voice, routine questions. I removed my son from my Visa, removed them both from the joint checking account I'd set up for household convenience. Changed my PIN, changed my online password. The representative read back the changes. Just to confirm, you're removing both authorized users and updating all access codes. That's correct, I said. And I'd like fraud alerts on any attempted access. Of course. Is there anything else I can help you with today? There was. But not from her. I made coffee, ate toast standing at the counter, and left the house before either of them came downstairs. Drove 40 minutes to see Warren Schiff, an attorney I'd met through a mutual acquaintance 3 years ago at a Chamber of Commerce dinner. He practiced real estate and property law out of a modest office above a tax preparation place on Clement Street. He'd given me his card then. I'd kept it in my wallet the way you keep certain things, not because you expect to need them, but because some part of you knows the world doesn't always cooperate with your expectations. His receptionist, a woman named Agnes who looked like she'd been there since the building was constructed, told me he was booked until 11. I said I'd wait. She brought me weak coffee in a paper cup, and I sat in a chair reading a Field and Stream from 2019 until Warren came out himself to get me. He was in his mid-50s, methodical, the kind of man who takes notes in complete sentences. I told him the situation in the same order I'd organized the spreadsheet. Facts first, timeline second, desired outcome third. What I have, I told him, is a verbal arrangement. No lease, no rent, nothing in writing. What I want is my house back. He asked me a series of careful questions. How long had they been living there? What the arrangement had been at the start? Whether any money had ever changed hands? Whether there had been any explicit agreement about how long they could stay? No agreement, I said. No rent. No timeline. I allowed them to stay temporarily, and temporary became indefinite. He nodded, making notes. Guessed it will, he said. The absence of a lease actually works in your favor here. No tenant protections apply. You have the right to terminate the arrangement with proper written notice. He looked up. How much notice do you want to give? I thought about it. 30 days, I said. More than the law requires. But I want it documented that I was reasonable. He drafted the notice while I sat across from him. clean, formal language. My name, the address, their names, the deadline. We reviewed it together and I signed 2 copies. One more thing, I said. I handed him a folder. 2 years of financial records. Unauthorized charges on my credit card. I'd pulled the most egregious ones that morning. The sofa, the Asheville trips, a $1,400 charge at a furniture boutique I'd never set foot in. I don't know if that's actionable yet, but I want it on record. Warren flipped through the pages without expression. Depending on what we find in the full audit, breach of authorized use can result in civil liability. He closed the folder. Let me do a more thorough review. I'll call you by Friday. His fee was $600 for the consultation and notice drafting. I wrote the check without hesitation. My son had spent nearly that amount on a weekend in Asheville. He'd charged to my card without asking. I drove home with the notice on the passenger seat. Their car was in the driveway. I sat in the truck for a moment. Looking at my house the way you look at something you'd forgotten was yours. Then I went inside. They were in the kitchen, my daughter-in-law making something that involved a blender, my son on his phone at the table. He looked up. "Hey, where'd you go this morning?" I set my keys on the hook by the door, walked to the kitchen table, placed a copy of the notice in front of him, and one in front of her. Neither of them picked it up immediately. My son looked at the paper, then at me. "What is this?" "Read it," I said. He picked it up. I watched his eyes move across the first paragraph, the formal language, the law firm letterhead, the date. His face changed the way a face changes when something stops being abstract. He set it down. "You're kicking us out. I'm giving you 30 days' notice to make other arrangements. That's more than the law requires." My daughter-in-law had gone still. She was holding the blender pitcher, not moving, reading her copy with an expression I hadn't seen from her before. Not the pleasantness. Something underneath it. "This is because of last night," she said. "Last night clarified things that were already true." "Dad," my son stood up, the chair scraping the floor I'd refinished 3 summers ago. "We're family. You can't just... There has to be a conversation before you involve lawyers." "This is the conversation," I said. "The notice is legal, the timeline is final. I'd suggest you start looking at apartments this week." He turned away from me, then back. I could see him calculating, the way you can always tell when someone is figuring out which argument to try first. He'd been a charming kid, my son. Good at finding the right angle on things. I used to admire that about him. "You gave us no warning," he said. "We don't have savings. We've been contributing to this household in ways that aren't financial." "She handles all the..." "I have 2 years of records," I said. "I know exactly what's been contributed." My daughter-in-law put the blender pitcher down on the counter, softly. That was somehow the part that stayed with me. How careful she was with my things even in that moment. "We'll need more than 30 days, she said. "The rental market right now. 30 days is what the notice says." I turned toward the stairs. "I'll be in my room if there's anything else." I heard my son say her name, low and tense, as I climbed the stairs. A whole conversation compressed into those 2 syllables. 14 steps to the 2nd floor. I'd climbed them my entire adult life. The call started the next day. My brother-in-law first, Lorraine's older brother, a man who'd always been faintly disapproving of me and had recently found new reasons. "I heard what's happening. Donna is devastated." My daughter-in-law's name. "Yes, I'll give it to her now, Donna. She says you gave them a legal notice without any prior discussion." "I discussed it for 2 years," I said. "Informally. They didn't take it seriously. Now I'm being formal." "You could have talked to them first." "I did talk to them first. This is just the part where a document exists." He hung up without saying goodbye. That was fine. My son's mother. We've been divorced for 17 years, civil about it the way people are when they've both moved on to other things, but still in occasional contact because of him. Called that afternoon. Her voice had the careful neutrality of someone who'd been briefed. "He says you've given him 30 days to leave his home." "My home," I said. He's been staying here for 2 years without contributing anything financially. I'm giving him 30 days, and that's generous. A pause. Did something happen? On my birthday, he and Donna hosted 8 guests for dinner at my house and left a paper plate for me in the kitchen. Another pause, longer. Oh, she said, yes. She didn't argue after that. We talked for a few more minutes, neutrally, and she wished me well in the way she always had, briefly, sincerely, without complications. It was the best conversation I'd had in weeks. Warren called Thursday, not Friday. I've gone through the full records, he said. The visa charges you flagged are the beginning, not the end. 18 months of purchases. I'll send you the breakdown. But we're looking at approximately $16,000 in charges that fall outside any reasonable interpretation of household expenses. He listed a few: a road bike, multiple hotel weekends, a charge at a photography equipment store that had clearly not produced any photographs in my possession. If you want to pursue civil recovery, we have a strong case. $16,000. I sat with that number for a moment. Draft the demand letter, I said. The letter arrived in my email the next morning. I printed it, put it in an envelope with Warren's letterhead visible, and set it on the kitchen table before they came downstairs. I was at my desk when I heard Donna's voice first. The specific pitch of it, when something has gone wrong, and the pleasantness has to work harder to stay in place. Then, my son's voice, rising. I waited. He knocked twice. Sharp knocks, not asking. Come in, I said. He stood in the doorway holding the letter, and for a moment he looked exactly the way he had at 9 years old, when I'd caught him in a lie about his homework. Not sorry, exactly, but aware that the math wasn't working in his favor. You're suing us. I'm giving you an opportunity to reimburse me before I sue you. Those are different things. Dad, 16,000. He stopped. Some of those charges were for things we needed. A road bike. I used that bike. With my money, without asking. Donna appeared behind him. She'd had time to compose herself. She came in and sat in the chair across from my desk. And she did something I hadn't expected. She looked directly at me. I know we've taken advantage, she said. I know that now. We got comfortable, and we stopped thinking about where everything was coming from. She glanced at the letter. We can't pay $16,000, not all at once. Then arrange a payment plan through your attorney. My son's voice sharpened. We don't have an attorney. Then get one. Dad, come on. He sat on the edge of the bed, and the familiarity of that. My son sitting on the edge of a bed in my house the way he had since childhood, almost got to me. Almost. Can we just talk about this like a family? Without lawyers and notices and... I have been talking, I said. For 2 years, I've been a presence in this house that both of you worked around. I was the person who left the dining room on his birthday because there wasn't a place set for him. The letters and the lawyers are what happens when the talking doesn't work. Neither of them said anything. The notice stands. The demand stands. You have 30 days on the 1st and 30 on the 2nd. I turned back to my laptop. Close the door on your way out. After they left, I heard Donna crying down the hall. Real tears, I think. Or at least a kind that I couldn't categorically dismiss. My son's voice, low and wheezing, then quiet. That evening, I drove to the home improvement store and bought 2 wireless security cameras. Not because I was afraid of them, because I'd been in logistics long enough to know that documentation is how you protect what's yours, and that documentation requires evidence, and that people behave differently when they know they're being recorded. I installed both cameras before they came home, one in the living room, angled at the main entry, one in the kitchen, wedged between the cabinet and the ceiling. I printed notification sheets required by state law to inform occupants of surveillance in common areas, and left one under each of their bedroom doors. I heard my son in the hallway that night. Are you serious right now? Legal requirement, I called from my room. You've been notified. A door closed. Hard. Warren called the following week. I've been in contact with their attorney. A pause that told me something. They retained someone. Good, I said. That means they're taking it seriously. Their attorney is arguing that the financial arrangement constituted an implied tenancy and that the charges represent mutual household expenditures. A longer pause. It's not a strong argument, but it means this may take longer than the 30 days. How much longer? If they file for a stay, another 60 days, possibly 90. We'd likely prevail, but it wouldn't be immediate. I thought about 60 more days of paper plates and eucalyptus centerpieces. Then I thought about the alternative. What would accelerate it? An offer of settlement. You reduce the financial demand in exchange for an agreed vacate date within 14 days. I thought about it for 2 days. Not because I was uncertain, but because I wanted to be sure I was doing it for the right reasons. To end it cleanly, not to back down. There's a difference. I'd learned that about myself somewhere in this process. I called Warren on Wednesday morning. Counter offer. I reduced the financial demand to $8,000, payable over 12 months. In exchange, they vacate within 14 days and sign a release of any future claims related to the property. He called back in 4 hours. They've accepted. I signed the agreement that afternoon at Warren's office. 2 copies, notarized. One for me, one for them. On the drive home, I thought about the moment in the Denny's parking lot 3 weeks earlier. The grand slam. The fluorescent lights. The teenager who'd called me sir. The moment when I'd made a list in my head instead of going back to argue with people who'd already decided what I was worth. The truck was loaded in 2 trips on a Thursday morning. I watched from the kitchen window, drinking coffee I'd made the way I always make it. 2 scoops. Same routine since before my son was born. They moved efficiently, which surprised me. No stalling, no last-minute attempts at conversation. My daughter-in-law paused once in the front doorway, looking back at the foyer, the way you look at a place when you know you won't be coming back to it. My son found me in the kitchen on his last pass. He stood in the doorway. Neither of us said anything for a moment. That's the thing about 30-plus years with someone. You can sit inside a silence and both know what's in it. I should have done better, he said. I don't have a better answer than that. It was the first honest sentence he'd said to me in months, maybe longer. I recognized it as such. You can, I said. There's still time for that. He nodded once. Picked up the last box. Walked out the front door. I heard the truck engine start. Heard it back down the driveway. Heard it go. Then the house settled into a quiet I hadn't heard since Lorraine was alive, and we'd sit on Sunday mornings without needing to fill the space. I walked through every room. Living room. Kitchen. The dining room, where my good china sat in the cabinet behind glass. I opened the cabinet, took out one of the dinner plates, turned it over in my hands. Small crack on the underside where someone had stacked it wrong sometime in the last 2 years. Still usable. Still mine. I set it on the table. Got the rest of the place setting, laid it properly, the way Lorraine had taught me. Fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right, folded napkin. Set one place, at the head of the table, and sat down in it, just to feel what it felt like. My neighbor June appeared at the door that afternoon with a pot of beef stew and the matter-of-fact kindness of someone who doesn't require an explanation. I saw the truck, she said, handing it over. Figured you could use a real meal. I thanked her. Meant it. That evening, I sat on the front steps with the stew and the last of the September light and thought about what my wife would have made of all this. Lorraine was patient in ways I'm not, but she was also clear-eyed about people. She'd raised our son to know better. He'd known and done it anyway, which was his choice and would be his accounting to make. I was done doing it for him. I called Warren the next morning to close out the active portions of the file. He congratulated me on the resolution in the measured way attorneys do, acknowledging it without excessive warmth, which was exactly right. One thing he said before we hung up. Keep those payment records when the monthly checks come in. If they miss a payment, we want clean documentation. I'll keep records, I said. I always have. That was true. I pulled out the laptop, opened a new spreadsheet. Settlement agreement. Reimbursement tracking. Column A, payment due date. Column B, amount. Column C, receive date. Column D, notes. Empty cells, waiting to be filled in, the best kind of document. Not a record of harm, just a ledger of things going the way they should. Outside, October was starting. The maple in the front yard had begun to turn, same as it did every year. Same color it had turned the fall. Lorraine and I moved in and stood in the driveway thinking, this is ours. This is really ours. Still ours. Just mine now. I closed the laptop, put on a jacket, and went outside to rake the first leaves of the season. Nobody was going to do it for me, which was fine. I was getting good at that again. Doing things for myself, remembering that capable people in their 60s can fill their own hours, make their own choices, eat their own meals at their own table without asking anyone's permission. The leaves came down bright and cold in the morning wind. I raked them into a pile by the curb and stood for a moment looking at the house. The beige siding that needed paint next spring, the front window where Lorraine used to keep herbs on the sill. The door I'd replaced the locks on last week with 2 sets of keys that belonged to exactly one person. I went inside, made coffee, sat at the head of my own table. It was just breakfast. But it was mine, and I had earned every quiet minute of it. If this story meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you'd like it and subscribe to the channel. For those of you carrying similar weight right now, you already know what you need to do. Leave a comment. I read all of them. I've thought about what happened a lot since then. Not obsessively, I'm past that stage, but the way you turn a stone over in your hand occasionally. Not looking for something, just making sure you understand the weight of it. What I keep coming back to is this: none of it happened suddenly. That's the part that's hardest to admit. The paper plate on my birthday wasn't the beginning of something. It was the end of a long, slow process I had participated in, just as much as they had. Every time I let a month pass without addressing the rent that never came, every time I moved my things to make room for theirs without saying a word. Every time I told myself that this was family, and family was complicated, and maybe next month things would shift. I taught them, by my silence, that I could be managed. And they learned the lesson well. That's not blame directed outward. That's me looking clearly at my own part in it. There's a version of patience that is genuinely a virtue, the kind that holds steady through difficulty, that gives people room to grow, that doesn't demand immediate accounting for every small failure. I believe in that kind of patience. But there is another kind that masquerades as patience, while actually being something else. Avoidance, maybe, or a fear of conflict dressed up in the language of generosity. That second kind doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the reckoning and lets the debt accumulate interest. I was 63 years old, standing in my own kitchen, holding a paper plate my daughter-in-law had set out for me like I was an afterthought in my own house. And the truest thing I can say about that moment is that it wasn't Donna who put me there. I had walked myself there, one quiet accommodation at a time, over 2 years, what I did the next morning. The calls to the bank, the drive to Warren's office, the notice on the kitchen table. None of that was revenge. I've heard people use that word about situations like mine, and I understand the appeal of it, but it's not accurate. Revenge is about making someone feel something. What I did was about stopping something, closing an account that had gone into deficit not just financially, but in every way that matters, in dignity, in clarity, in self-respect. The hard truth about neglecting your own boundaries for long enough is that eventually the people around you stop seeing them as real. My son wasn't a bad person when he moved in. He became careless and uncomfortable in his carelessness, because nothing ever pushed back. Donna wasn't malicious from the start. She was practical, and practical people will fill whatever space they're given. I had given them everything, including the space where my own standing in my home should have been. What I know now is that the willingness to hold your ground, not angrily, not cruelly, but clearly and without apology, is not a hardness. It's a form of honesty. It tells the people in your life the truth about who you are and what you'll accept, which is ultimately more respectful than the soft lie of endless accommodation. My son said on his way out the door that he should have done better. I believed him. I also know that he wouldn't have arrived at that acknowledgement without the 30-day notice, The demand letter, the cameras, all of it. Sometimes the most useful thing you can do for someone is stop making it comfortable for them to be less than they're capable of. The maple in my front yard turned orange that October, same as it always had. I raked the leaves myself, made my own coffee, sat at the head of my own table. It was just a Tuesday morning, but I had earned every quiet minute of it, and I knew exactly what it had cost me to get there.